All right, everybody. Hey, welcome. I say we get started. I'm sure more will join as we get going here. And I'm super excited you're here because tonight's training is all about conquering fear, conquering fear. It's one of those things, that fear that a lot of people say, oh, I don't have it. I never had it. I don't deal with it. And then on the opposite side, they're nervous, scared, deal with anxieties and frustrations, which if you just translate it, it's just another form of fear. So I have a whole structure for us. A couple things, love to make sure I could talk with you and not at you. So the more interaction that we have in the chat bar, the better. Also, if I know some of you don't have your screens on, if you have video there, love for you to turn it on, because it would just be really weird if I did the whole event, like whole training like that. That would just be super creepy and weird. So I want to make sure we could interact together. Okay. All right. Let me share my screen here. Make sure you got a pen and paper. And while we go through the training, let's just embrace where we are. Okay. Let's embrace where we're at in this moment. If you deal with fear, it's perfectly fine right now. If you don't deal with fear, or you don't know how to identify fear, or you don't know when it comes on and when it leaves, there's no judgments here. We're all together to learn. And if we could all learn together, can you type in the chat bar, just a big old boom? Like, let's do this together. I want it to be an extremely safe space for everybody, which is normally the environment that I have. And also a very non-judgmental space. So we could just be like, whatever you want to share, we're just going to be here willing to help you get through things. I do know that on the other side of fear lies this ability of the power to accomplish so many things. Even if that one accomplishment is the ability to look in the mirror and not have the fear of talking down to yourself, but actually be able to talk up about yourself. So let's dig in right now. Hey, Mr. Dave Monk, nice to see you there. All right, I thought this was a really perfect picture here too, right? It's kind of like, if you wonder for all of us as where fear starts, the majority of the fear, as we're going through the training, I'll teach you where a lot of it comes from, right? It comes from these childhood moments. So I think this visual picture right here just demonstrates so well of this kid and this dinosaur, like, hey, I know you appear really scary, but like, I'm not going to live in this state of fear. I do need to read the disclaimers because I feel it's a really good practice. So if you heard it before, you got to hear it again. All right. By watching this training, you are agreeing to the following. Professional advice disclaimer. FuDog Group does not provide any legal, financial, medical, or professional advice, and attendees should consult their own lawyer, accountant, doctor, and/or financial professional for relevant advice. Nothing contained in this training program should be construed as professional, legal, accounting, medical, therapeutic, or financial advice. In addition, no representation whatsoever is made regarding the results to be achieved from participating in the program or through the use of the program materials or confidential information. If we all agree to the top disclaimer, can you all just type in, I agree? Can you all just type in, I agree? Okay. Thank you, everybody. Let's do the massive results disclaimer. FuDog Group only provides insight. You apply it. Therefore, FuDog Group is not responsible for your massive success and growth in all areas of your life, including, but not limited to, a better relationship with your spouse and children, more wealth, a more successful career, greater impact to serve others in the community and the world, a significant legacy, improved mental and physical health and wellness, a constant quest for knowledge, wisdom, and improvement, and a greater all sense of fulfillment in all aspects of your life. FuDog Group is not responsible if you start getting up earlier. Enjoy a more active and enriching day. Live more productively productively, smile a lot more, and feel amazing, all while making better choices. FuDog Group is not responsible for turning you into a superhuman who squeezes the most rewarding experiences out of every month while living your best life ever. And if you agree to live your best life ever, type in best life ever, because when we remove fear, that's exactly the journey we're going to be on. That's going to be the journey we're going to be on. And this will make it an amazing training for all of us if we have our cameras on. No recording. We'll have the replay for you, so no worries about that. We'll respect each other. We'll support each other. It's a judgment-free zone, so let's just be curious. We will not do politics, no self-promotion. So if you sell any type of berry juices or anything, I'm sure they're amazing. Send me samples. We're just not going to do it right here. Number 8, playful out, take notes, and participate in the chat bar. All magic happens after taking action. And number 10, being willing to transform and grow. And I would say number 10 is a really good place to start already talking about where fear starts to creep in. Everybody says they're willing to grow, but you ever notice that in life, as you grow, there's 3 types of people, and you tell me if you agree. There's one type of person, they love your growth. They're like, holy crap, you've improved so much. You're amazing. I'm so proud of you. Those are the fun. That's so fun to be around, right? There's the other people, they just don't give you any time of day. They could care less about what you do and how you do. It's just like, you don't exist. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. And then there's the middle people. Why are you doing that? What do you mean you're on a training at 7, 8, 9, 10, 5 o'clock at night? Like, what do you mean? And they're just always trying to give you that like poo-poo sandwich type thing, right? You're trying to grow, they're trying to pull you down, and they don't mean it intentionally. They just have a sense of fear, right? Like if you grow, what if you outgrow me? Or maybe you'll learn something I don't know. Or maybe you'll learn something and figure out that what I was doing to you all these years may not have been helping you. Can you relate? Type in relate in the chat bar if you can relate to that. Now, we're going to go for a solid 90 minutes here. My hopes for you is that you will commit to the whole 90 minutes. I know some of you have little babies and some of you are eating. It's perfectly fine. Whatever you got to do in life, like just hang on for the ride and let's do it together over the 90 minutes time. Okay. Here's going to be our agenda for tonight. We're going to address what fear is, and we'll dig into that a little bit. Number 2, we'll talk about how fear manifests. Like, how does this whole thing come about, right? Where does it come from? How did it get started, right? Number 3, we'll talk about how to deal with it, right? How to deal with it. Number 4, we'll talk about how to rewire these things, right? How do we rewire it? And then number 5, we'll talk about like, how do we now create big power, right? Big power. I'm so glad all of you are here. Not because I know if you have fear or not, but my hopes are that, and man, did I do a whole lot of posting to get people here. I think the main issue is so many people have been forced into fear. And it's not, just so you guys know, we'll talk deep about this. For some of you, there could be moments of sensitivity. There could be moments you don't agree. There could be moments that you're like, whoa, I don't know if I like this. I'm just going to say, like, step outside yourself a minute and let's look at it from the most open mind that you can. And then when we're done, if you dislike whatever I said, you could just, flip me the finger and kill the Zoom. It's not like we're in the same room together, or you could send me nasty letters. But like, here's the main thing. People don't fear the pandemic right now. That's not what anybody fears. They fear a couple other things. One fear is death, right? And this is why this became such an important training about conquering fear, because People don't fear COVID or something. They fear death, right? That's what they fear. Like, I'll get sick and die. Someone I know will get sick and die. And then the second biggest fear that I think is happening now is being forced things against your will, right? And what this has caused is that no one's giving you statistics on, but you'll tell me in the chat bar if you believe that the statistic is true or you don't know. But what this has caused is, first off, anxiety to go through the roof. Can anybody relate to that? Do you know anybody, and it could be you, that like anxiety is such a level, it's almost creating states of paralysis today, right? I mean, it's through the roof. And the way that most people deal with anxiety, and anxiety is a state of fear, just so you know, it's a fear of predicting what's going to happen, right? We don't know what's going to happen, but we're predicting it's going to happen. So it bubbles up and we deal with this. And there's only a couple ways, and it's probably the saddest thing I'll say here, but then we'll get to all good stuff, I promise you. But the one sad way to sedate this fear and to be unscared is, let's just take something that makes us unscared, right? So let's drink something, smoke something, shoot something, break something, scratch something. And if you look through life, and I have experience with people for a very, very long time. This is like over 3 decades of me helping people through human behavior, mindset, all kinds of things, from people who were shooting heroin to people who were cutting themselves, to people that were trying to hurt themselves, to people who are just in a state of fear, can't go places. And this ain't a new thing. It's just magnified right now, right? It's magnified. And the worst part is when fear, some kind of fear, gets to the point that it's so bad, then what happens is, Patrick, people say, I no longer want to be here on the planet. And no one's giving you the statistics of this, right? No one's running the statistics of anxiety, depression, suicide. You hear a little bit about it, but not enough. This all comes out of fear. And that's why it was so important for me to tackle this with all you tonight, not so much because you need it, but maybe you'll hear something in tonight and then you'll take this training and give it to someone else and say, can you just watch this, this training? Okay. Most of you know me, Mike Aguilera. They call me Hanchi. That's a martial arts instructor's name. That just means instructor of instructors. And here's a little bit, and normally I talk about this as, look at my great accomplishments here, right? And I've had a lot of great accomplishments in my life. What most people don't know is I've also had to battle a whole lot of fear through my life too. And I had to train myself to get to a point where I could win over fear and fear doesn't win over me. You might want to write that down, because that's the goal, right? Where you win over fear and fear doesn't win over you. And you can imagine in the company in the top, I had, and we'll talk about that in a minute, you know, some of you are new in my world here, but you know, that's where I started as an electrician in a truck. And first I had fear of being my own business owner. There's a lot of fear of that. You don't know about all the things. You don't know about insurances and banks and regulate. You don't know this stuff. So there's fear. Then you get past that fear. And then all of a sudden you have fear if you hire somebody. Like, what if I can't keep them to work? Or, you know, what if they're no good? And what if they break shit? And they do break shit on you, right? And then you have another fear. Like, what if I have, and I'll fast forward this, like you go from not owning your own business and then you decide to grow it. And then in a 10-year period, you go from like under $1 million to 32 million, from a couple trucks to 165 trucks, right? From, hey, Chuck, you go from a couple employees to 200 employees. You go from a little facility of a 2-car garage to a big ass building. And if you don't manage this inside the tools of making sure you win over fear, you could live in a state where there's people in business that get such a state of fear, they get, boom, lockdown and paralysis. And along the way, you make a lot of shitty decisions, and that creates more fear. On the bottom, there's a lot of fear. That's a business I've grown, CEO Warrior. I got clients here, warriors here, and the last 7 years, we've become the top training and implementation organization on the planet. There's a lot of fear there, right? Like, hey, what if people don't listen? What if they don't, a lot of people don't, they look at me and they say, you're pretty intense. I'm intense because the fact of me serving somebody and then not getting to the level of their life is like it's like kryptonite to me. It's like the most painful thing to think that I'm fighting to help somebody and they're not fighting to help themselves. So there's lots of fear there, right? So along these ways of great accomplishments become great control, okay? Great accomplishments, along the way, you gain great control. And you could imagine here, yes, my life's amazing, but there's been plenty of fears here. That's my beautiful wife. We just had our anniversary the other day. So we're together since we're 15. So it's like, I don't know if it was 36 or 37. I think it's 36 years. And we've been married over 22 years, right? But clearly it took me 9 years, 9 years of like waiting to ask her to marry me, right? At the point that, it was all serious and everything. So clearly I had a state of fear there, right? And I don't know about any of you, who's a dad or a mom? Type it in the chat bar, dad or mom. Like, is there a fair amount of fear that happens there? Like, you're going to have a baby and it all feels good when you're rubbing the belly. And then you're like, holy shit, is everything all right? The thing doesn't kick. You're like, oh my God, it comes out. I remember the first, my son, it's like, you got fucking monitors. So they can't roll over on themselves. They can't do that. I'm pretty sure when we were young, that like you got shoved in a little corner and shit. They didn't have all this stuff. There's a whole lot of fear there, but you learn to conquer the fear. And the more fears that you learn to identify where they came from, and I'll walk you through this, the easier it is to conquer these fears to the point there is not this fear. Yeah, wood crib where your neck gets stuck. Yeah, right? And I just want to let you know, you guys are covered. We got a really amazing team on here helping me tonight. My beautiful wife, Erin, is on here. Ken's on here. And we've done all of these things that I've been doing since the first of this year. Every one of them conquers fear, right? It conquers fear. Like we just finished Change the Channel. Did anybody do Change the Channel? Type in Change the Channel in the chat bar. This was all about changing your identity. I'll do it again probably before the end of the year. It was 2 nights a week for 2 weeks. And this was about reframing your identity. And like, you got to reframe it to even like first you got to remove fear. Are you okay changing yourself to become a more powerful self? Right. And then we've done a lot of other things and we'll keep you posted as they come up, unlocking the wealth code. Do you think becoming wealthy, you guys tell me, to become wealthy, and who wants financial security in their future? Just financial freedom. Just type in freedom in the chat bar. Like, who wants it? Like, yeah. The difference between freedom, financial freedom, or freedom as a whole, the more you conquer fear, the quicker you can get to freedom, The more you deal with fear, the more you feel like you're shackled to the situation. And write that down, shackled to the situation, because that's what fear does. But for those of you that don't know what FuDog Group is, we do all these amazing trainings like One Life, Wealth Code, and we have one coming up, Seekers of Power, and we have a group we call the Freedom Tribe. These are people that are looking to unshackle themselves from the situations of life and improve their life, right? Now, I want to make sure everybody knows about this. We'll put it in the chat bar. There's a whole lot of other trainings for you guys that you could get access to. And I strongly urge you, I know there's a lot of stuff to read in the world. There's a lot of stuff to study. There's a lot of things. I just want to help you as much as I can. So I will tell you that this energy clearing, actually just do all of these. And they'll put in there the email, and we're on Facebook, all of us on the FuDog team. I'm on Telegram. Who's on Telegram? Type in Telegram if you're on it. If you're not, it's really a great platform. And if you are on it, it's probably the best way to communicate with me in life today, because I don't answer text at all. I never answer my phone. I don't really do email anymore, but Telegram, I'm on there. So make sure you're in there. The team will type in, you could go get the training. So let's start talking about this. And this is going to be the first, let's call it the first test of how honest can we be about what we are afraid of right now. Like, what are you fearing right now? You type it in a chat bar. I'll give you some examples. Like, maybe there's a fear around staying the way it is now. Like, there's a fear of, will it get any better? Are we going to keep living this way no matter where you're living in the world, right? And then there might be a fear around having conversations. I can make a pretty strong bet here. And thank you for that, Chuck. Yeah, like being a great leader. I could almost bet 100%, if not all of you, a bunch of you have an honest conversation that you're afraid to have with someone. Type in possible if that's possible. If you type in possible, it doesn't admit anything, but type in possible if that's possible. It could be your dad. It could be your wife. It could be anybody. Like, it's so interesting, especially in relationships, right? You look at relationships and we live in a state of like, how truthful are you, right? Like, what do you have fear of? And I'll tell you, when most people, you could recognize fear is when relationships go south and all of a sudden, we'll use a husband. It could be a husband or wife. A husband decides he's going to start seeing somebody else cheating, and you find out who he's cheating with wears negligee and sexy clothes. And you talk to the guy, because I've had conversations with people over the years and said, why? Tell me, like, where did it go? No judgments. Where did it go south? And one person told me, I just couldn't take looking at sweatpants no more. And I said, but did you ever tell the person, like, you just were hoping for not sweatpants? He's like, nah, I was afraid to say it, afraid to be judged, afraid of what she would say. I said, so you thought you would destroy a whole relationship out of a state of fear of one conversation? And then he said something and caught himself. He says, well, what if I said it and it destroyed our relationship? And I was like, you're divorced. He's like, yeah, I guess it destroyed the relationship. I said, fear destroyed your relationship. Fear destroyed it. Not honesty, fear. Now, could honesty destroy it? Yeah, if you have one person that can have a more upside conversation and the other person looks at it as a downside conversation. How many of you have a fear of judgment? Be upfront with me. Like, here's how you know you have a fear of judgment. You spend 2 hours to get ready before you go out to a friend's house. Your hair has to be perfect. You got to smell perfect, look perfect. Everything's got to be perfect about you, right? And if it's not, because God forbid someone says, oh, look at you. Are you okay? You're like, yeah, why? Oh, it doesn't look like you shaved. My wife says, my God, look like you grew a beard already today. I said, yeah, I'm kind of an animal. Like, I shaved this morning. It's like, it's here. Like, this is what it is, right? This is what it is. But people have this state of fear. So what happens is they're afraid. And I want you to write this down. And I wonder if it's true for you, maybe not in all areas, but in any area. Are you afraid of being 100% yourself, your real self? Now think about your real self. We're going to talk about this a little bit of where these fears come from. How many of you still have a parent that if they could, now I'm level 51, okay? That's a more powerful way to say 51. I don't ever say old anything, I'm more powerful. Level 51 is more powerful than level 50. How many of you, like, actually, you've been out of your house a long time, but if your parents actually could, they would still tell you what to do, where to go, how to do it, when to do it, why to do it, what to eat, what not to eat. You ever have this? Like, I watch grown parents tell grown-up children, hey, like, don't eat that. I'm like, your son's 40. You're telling him what not to eat. He's 40. Like, what do you think? Right? And then this becomes fear, right? It becomes a state of fear. Well, I don't want to say anything to anybody. I don't want to tell them anything. Number one first step is you have to identify what you're actually afraid of. And just take 1 minute, just 1 minute. Don't type it in the chat bar. And I just want you to write one thing down that you're afraid of that you would like to face in a different way. You would like to remove it. Even if it's that tough conversation you're afraid of. Some people are afraid to admit the problem, right? They're afraid to admit the problem. They're like, no, I don't have a problem drinking this, eating this, smoking this. And I'm like, okay, as long as you agree. But if you did get rid of it, what are you afraid of? Oh, I'm not afraid of nothing. Then why don't you just stop drinking coffee in the morning? Oh, no. I love it. You love it or you need it? Oh, I love it. Oh, so could you not drink it till the afternoon? Oh, no, I couldn't get started with my day. What about you just don't do it tomorrow morning? Wake up and don't drink coffee tomorrow morning. Now, how many of you type in the chat bar, would it kill you? You ask them, and I said, what are you afraid of? I'm afraid I can't function. I'm afraid of, no. There is a fear. I promise you. It's a fear. Because I don't know about any of you. When my dad took his toast, hey, Judy, and he dunked it. My dad used to dunk his toast in his coffee. Anybody else do that, or their dad does that? Like, dunk their toast in the coffee. It's like a sloppy, mushy, shitty mess of coffee tasting stuff. And I remember eating that and being like, what human eats this toast that's like dripping now, right? Yeah, Ken, just nasty. But I remember tasting that, and I don't think anybody like tasted it and go, oh my God, this is what coffee is? It's incredible. I think there's other things that there's a greater fear of. Now, think about, and I want this to start making sense, because you got to see the history of fear in you, not the history of fear in everyone. You're around your buddies. Your buddies smoke. You don't smoke. You decide to smoke. Type in the chat bar, what was your fear? What was your fear? Think of the very first time you smoked, those of you that smoke, and think of your fear that you had. Fear of what? Rejection, not fitting in, judgment, right? When we go to the next section here, I want you to understand and consider two things. One, fear is created. Fear is created. You're not born into the fear mechanism, okay? It's not like you opened your eyes, you're like, I'm afraid. Now, you might have been afraid because you cried, there was a big light, you came out of a belly or a hole, and all of a sudden there might have been something, but you weren't conscious of that fear. Fear was created throughout history. Some of you probably fear loud voices. How many of you fear like a loud, deep, aggressive voice? Like it starts to shake you. Be transparent. I know a lot of people are. Well, you don't fear the voice. You fear that was your dad's voice. Who had a dad that had a loud voice? Anybody? Just type in dad in the chat bar. Did anybody have a dad with a loud voice? Yeah, right? Like he spoke and everybody listened. You became fearful of that. Now, the second part here is you have to understand what fear is to you, right? Like, what is fear to you? Now, if we look at the largest fears and you were to survey people, I bet one of the largest fears, you tell me, probably would be death. Is that a possibility? Is death? Type in possibility in chat bar. Is that a possibility, like death? Now, if you think of death, it's like, well, I fear a couple things about death. Death of me, death of family, right? Death of friends, maybe death of animals, right? There's death. Now, this is a fear. Now, the problem with fear, it's not really a problem. There's always a conflict. There's always a conflict, right? There's fear, and then there's belief, and then there's like this conflict line, right? And this conflict line has measurements. Because if you really believed, and I don't know what beliefs everybody has here, and whatever your belief is, I'm perfectly fine with it. Some of you probably believe in God. Maybe some of you believe in universe. Maybe, I don't know what you believe in. I'm okay with all of it. Well, some people believe in heaven and like paradise, but fear death. Do you see the conflict? There's a conflict that gets reinforced there. Well, wait a minute. If it's an amazing place, you wouldn't fear it like that. But this is what fear does. Fear starts to create, write it down, stories. And stories start to create, you know, what you're going to feel about things. Fear is just a word, but it carries lots of emotions, and they all almost start internal. They all start internal, these emotions. And they magnify over time, right? They magnify over time. Today, there's a fear of comparison effect. You know what the comparison effect is? I look on social media, that person's amazing, has all this stuff. I don't, I fear I'll never have it, right? I look, the other day I seen a picture of somebody I know. I'm not super fond of him. He's getting on a little private plane. I was like, oh, all right, cool for him. If he posted it because he wanted people to admire him, well, I don't know. His fear is not maybe, what would his fear be? Like if he's posting something and he's like, look at me, he might have a fear of what? Type in the chat bar. Fear of not being enough. Fear of not being liked. Fear of not being cool. Fear that people don't think I accomplish things. I mean, when you start to look at it, there's so many aspects, and this fear starts to spider itself out, right? It starts like there's a fear here, and then it just starts spider webbing all over the place. And what happens is if there's enough of it, then we just get locked down where it's a constant state of triggered anxiety or triggered panic or triggered frustration. I guarantee a bunch of you that had a problem falling asleep, going to sleep, you're up all night. Tell me now, thinking back on it, minus a sickness, a diarrhea, a bug or something like that. I bet your mind was racing, and it was racing on a fear. Will the job go bad? Is my wife going to leave me? Is my son or daughter going to get hurt? Most people just don't stop a minute and say, well, wait a minute. If this is such a paralysis, such a situational program, and just so you know, this spider web is a sequence of reinforced programs. Well, I got good news for you. We're going to understand it so we can work through this. Yeah, Mondays are going to suck. That's my fear, right? That's my programmed fear, right? Oh my God, I'm going to hit a lot of traffic. What's my fear? You're going to be late somewhere. That's not your fear. You're going to be late. If you're going to be late to a place, what is your fear? Not that you're going to be late. What is it? Type it in the chat bar. And thank you for all your participation. You're afraid your sister-in-law or your, right, judged, criticized. Oh, look at you. You're never on time. Couldn't you have left earlier? So your fear is not the traffic. Your fear is the conversation that you're going to deal with, right? I'm going to kill someone on the road with road rage. Sounds like a reasonable fear. Now, as we go here and we want to start to understand the result, right? The result of real fear here and what could happen. Now, we may think that fear is just our own private, protection, but it's not. Understanding that people want to have power. They do. Okay. I don't think anybody wakes up. Do any of you wake up and say, I hope I'm weaker. I hope I'm less powerful. Do any of you do that? You're like, good morning. Today, I hope I am so weak. Like, I don't think that happens with people. They want power. But I do want you to understand something, that you've been taught to have no power at all. Let me make my point. When you were born, first, your parents or whoever brought you up, we'll just call it parents for sense of conversation, they told you what to do and not to do. Correct? Now, how many of you have a child or a little child or had a child or know someone that constantly pushed back on authority? Tell me. And it's probably some of you. I see some of you here. It's probably some of you. I could tell, right? You push back on authority. I'm not listening. I'm not going to do what that teacher says. They're mean. They're not doing it. And you tell them, you are to listen to me. You are to do this. I am the parent. You are the child. Now, this ain't to make you feel bad, because I understand, like, you're there to serve them. Do you think you're giving them power or deflating them for life? What do you think's starting to happen? You're starting to say, whoa, I'll slap the hell out of you and I'll show you who's more powerful, right? I'll whip you. I'll grab a switch. I'll grab a belt, and I'll let you know who's in power. And it ain't you, little boy. And what you call it is discipline. The more older school you are, the more older school the environment you grew up in, the more you led by a state of power. And you know what it was called? Leading by creating fear. Isn't that true? Didn't you lead by creating fear? You'll go in the corner. I'll smack you. You'll lose ice cream. You won't eat. You won't see your friends. So what I do is they create such a state of fear, you lose your power. Welcome to today. Now, some of you are going like this. Holy shit, I really fucked up my kids. No, it's okay. They probably rebelled you and went on their own early and said, F off. I'm going to get my own power. That's probably what they did. And some of them told you a thing or two, didn't they? And some of you went, congratulations. I'm just glad your ass is out of the house, Mr. Powerful One. And some of you said, oh man, okay. Did you ever tell, you got to love this. In school, they tell the kid, stop talking, be quiet, lower your voice. Then the kid's 18 years old and he's talking to you, and dads and moms, what do you tell him? I can't hear you. Speak up. Speak up for yourself. I can't hear you. Wait a minute. I just told you for most of your life, quiet in the house. That's the quiet room. And then as soon as you started to grow up, what did I tell you? You got to speak up for yourself. Wait a minute. I hope this is starting to put some things together, because you're right here. This is where you are. You're in the middle of conflict, military school next year. You're in the middle of conflict between fear and power. The most powerful one that you allow will win. It just happens today. Fear is coming by a tsunami of You can't do this, right? If you do this, you'll get sick. If you do this, you'll die. If you do this, you're a bad person. Like someone told me the other day, don't worry, I got my thing. You're safe. I don't feel safe by you. So don't tell me feel safe, because I don't feel safe by you. Right? Don't put your things on me. No, don't worry. You don't have to be afraid. I'm not afraid, but I'm going to stay in a state of my own power. Right? So my question is, if you look at all aspects, when we did the identity training, right, and we look at the wheel of life, for some of you that did the change the channel training or other trainings, you could start to look and say, wait a minute, in my relationship, where do I have fear? Where do I have power? Now, remember, power is not over someone. Power is internal. Power of freedom. Write that down. Power of freedom. To be exactly who you are, how you are, what you want to say, what you want to do. Now, will everybody love your power? I don't know. Everyone who loves you and understands you will. But the more you respect other people's ability to become stronger, more powerful. Now, a lot of people look at power as aggressiveness versus strength, right? Because you have, when you look at things like governments and things, you think of aggressiveness. All right, let's stop here 1 second and type in the chat bar for me right now so I could do a little gut check, and then we'll go understanding our reaction to fear. Tell me what's resonating for you right now. Tell me what I've said so far that you're starting to go, okay, I see this. I know where it is in my life. I'm starting to realize I have a program. I'm starting to realize I've been conditioned. I've been a shitty dad. It's okay. It's not over yet. You have time. I have way too much fear. Okay. And we're going to start working on that now. We create stories that are not accurate. Yeah. A lot of times they're stories. Great insights of fear versus power. Yeah. Right. Now, the more powerful you become, I want you to imagine you wake up tomorrow and you're Superman, Iron Man, the Hulk, and you walked around like a Hulk. I love the Hulk, right? He's just like huge. He could break shit if he wants. The bad part about the Hulk is after he breaks shit, he doesn't remember he broke it when he goes back to himself, right? But in that state, if you were in that state of power, strength, confidence, and you started eliminating fears one by one, ripping them out, tell me what starts to happen to your life, to your wealth, to your relationships, to your career, to everything. Tell me what happens in the chat bar immediately. Tell me what happens. You grow. How much, Chuck? How much do you grow? Like, you know the difference between someone who has a $20 million company and 200 million? Fucking fear. It's fear. You know the difference between someone who's together for 36 years and someone that quit after a couple? It was fear. Fear. Like, I don't know. Will I be loved this way? I'm afraid to have conversations. I'm afraid to say, I want to go out with my friends. I'm afraid to say this. And eventually they said, fuck this. I'm out of here. I'm not going to have fear no more. I don't want to live in fear. I'd rather live in freedom. And the quickest way to do that is get you out of my life, to only end up in another relationship that you're afraid to say something else to. Think about it, right? Okay, let's go to the next thing here. So understanding our reaction to fear is really important because everybody reacts a little different. Now, a lot of people, what happens is they start to get a sense of fear, and they get so much fear, you know what happens? They freeze. They're stuck, frozen. It creates paralysis. They surrender to the moment. This is when anxiety which I will tell you is, first off, people don't have to live with it. I'm not telling you to get off medications. I'm not telling you to do anything. You got to see your doctor. But I'm telling you, people don't have to live with it, but it creates such a fear of anxiety. They get stuck and they can't move forward. They're just done. They're frozen. It's like a kid runs in the middle of the street. You say, get out of the street. And the kid doesn't know what to do. This is the first reaction that people have to fear. Some people can't get out of bed because they're so afraid. And why not? I mean, shit, this time of year with Halloween coming, I mean, why would a child not be afraid to get in a car, take a shower alone, sit on, I mean, snakes come out of toilets, you get killed in the shower, there's monsters in the closet. I mean, why wouldn't people have been programmed for a state? And if you're bad, you get beaten. If you're real bad, you get locked up and beaten, right? So it's conditioned visually, kinesthetically to be frozen. Now let's look at another response to fear. And tell me, have any of you had that? Type in freeze. If you've ever been in a moment of fear, you're just like, not getting out of bed. I'm done. Yeah. All of us at one time, some of us, lots of times. Well, our goal is let's understand it and then we'll work through it. Okay. Now, the next thing is you get so much fear, adrenaline kicks in and you flight, you run away. You're like, I am so scared of the bully. I'm not going to stay here and get beat up. I'm going to run. I'm going to run like you've never seen a human run. Adrenaline kicks in. Adrenaline has a couple different functions. One, it will flight. And two, you say, that's it. Hands are up and you'll fight. It's another fear mechanism. When people are fighting all over Facebook, what are they fighting about, you think? Are they really fighting about right and wrong? Or are they fighting for, like, are they fighting about right and wrong? Or are they fighting for a bigger problem? Dumb shit. That's a good one. Their own status, their own ego. There's lots of reasons there, right? Lots of reasons. That's why they fight. Some of them flight. They just go. I was in a Facebook group. I didn't like everything people were saying. I said, I'm out. You all win. Goodbye. I'm out. I'm not going to fight with you. I'm not going to stay frozen. I'm not going to flight. You know what I did? I'm going to give you the secret to start moving forward. That's going to help us move forward with fear. Here's the next F. Move forward. Move forward. Anytime you start stepping forward, fear starts to look a different way, shape, and form. Remember, it's like, I'm looking for a distance. Oh my God, looks like a monster in the corner. I start stepping forward. I'm like, oh, it's my dad's jacket hung up in the corner. It's my dad's jacket. Now, the more powerful you become, the less fear you deal with. I mean, I've been doing martial arts for 36 years. Why? Well, because when I got beat up as a young kid by 5 gang members, I never wanted the fear of getting beat up again like that. I wanted to make sure that if that's ever going to happen to me, I'm more than prepared for it and never stop. But if I rewind time and look at it, I didn't train to protect myself. I trained to eliminate fear. Some people, they get bullied today. They're adults and they're getting bullied, verbally bullied. I bet some of you know someone getting bullied online, right? Well, because they're not living in that state of power. Now, once we understand our reaction to fear, you have to know where fear starts to sit in the body. It sits in places. I deleted my in-laws on Facebook. They didn't understand, but got over it. Yeah. Chuck, when I see people on there that I don't even like seeing what they do, I just delete them. And just eliminate them. That's it. I don't even have to see it no more. Right? But here's the thing. Let's use Chuck as an example. Chuck, when you started to see the post of your in-laws, where did it sit in your body? when you started to read it, look at it, see it, because fear sits in a location, solar plexus. Okay, that's what Steve says, solar plexus, the gut, right? It sits in the gut. And I want you to think of fear has a couple things that it conditioned for you. Trauma. Trauma creates fear. You get beat by a human over and over. You slap someone over and over. You're going to create trauma in somebody. You will. And the only way, this is probably going to be another one of those moments that might be generational, good or bad for you, but maybe awakening. If you hit somebody, you cause trauma. And the way that they remove the trauma is they grow up and they hit other people. By causing pain on another human, they remove the pain from themselves because it was conditioned that this trauma is a necessary thing. The other thing is guilt. Guilt's a fear that people live with. Man, if I say, if I'm not going, how many of you, tell me this, be upfront with me. How many of you went to a party, a gathering, a get together? You went somewhere and you did not want to do it, but you went out of guilt. Come on, type in guilt in the chat bar. I know you did. I bet a lot of you did. Now, what is guilt? It was fear of judgment. Well, if I don't go to the party, they're all going to say, you didn't go to the party and you made so-and-so feel bad. Everybody, answer this for me in the chat bar. Can you make anybody feel bad? No. Only they can make themselves feel bad. Now, can you make people feel pain? Yeah, if I stick this pen in your eye, I can make you feel pain. But I can't inflict verbal pain on you unless you choose it, unless you accept it. Now, what about shame, everybody? Shame. Does shame carry fear in it? Oh my God, I accidentally hurt this person. I banged into him. I crashed into my car. Now I'm afraid to drive because I fear that this is going to happen again. And all of these things sit in a part of the body. And what you don't realize is, okay, I don't want to go too deep on this training because we have other trainings we will, but all of you have this like energy field in your body, right? All of you have it. You may not know it, but you all have an energy field. Some of this fear, guilt, trauma, it sits in little areas in here. Now, some of it sits cellular. It's on the cells. Like if you ever had trauma to your body, like boom, impact, that fear sits in that moment. Like any of you that ever had your finger smashed really bad and a door shutting, I bet you have a fear mechanism. Do any of you have a fear mechanism? You're shutting. How many of you shut your car door and you like jerk back when you do it because at one time in your life, you crushed your fingers in a car door? Anybody have that? And that became fear and it sits within that body. It's programmed now within you, right? If we could start, when we start looking at this, and we'll start working our way there now, when we start understanding how to deal with fear, we have to first understand where the hell does this come from? How far back? Where did I learn this fear? Was it as a kid, as a teenager? Where did it start to happen, right? The second thing is, where do I feel it in my body? I got to start to identify, like, is it in my head? Tell me anybody that you know, so we don't point out anybody, any of you that know someone that deals with anxiety, where do they feel it, everybody? Type in the chat bar. Where do some people feel anxiety? Tell me. Back in the neck. A lot of times chest. And it's a fluttering, isn't it? It's like a fluttering of the chest when they're dealing. Where do they feel depression? Where do people feel depression? What do you think? Where do people that do feel it? The mind. Yeah. Depression happens a lot of times. It's in the head, spreads through the whole body, right? I get depressed in the thought process, depressed in the eyes, and all of a sudden, it carries through the body. Now, based on knowing this, knowing that this fear comes from a place and time, knowing that I'm feeling it in a place, do you think now, is it possible to control it, remove it, rewire it? Let me ask you this, and just type best life ever. Is it possible to live in a state of no fear? Just type in best life ever, because it doesn't mean you don't have calculated decisions. It doesn't mean that you don't sense things. It means you don't live in a state of paralysis or a state of emotional triggering, right? That's what power does. When you understand your mind, your body, your spirit, and energy, the 10th pillar, energy, when you understand how all this comes together, you now don't get in a state where you have to be afraid. And when you're in a state of power, do you run from the truth or do you speak the truth? Tell me in the chat bar. What do you do when you're in a state of power? Run from the truth or speak the truth? Yeah. Hey, I'm just going to let you know how I feel. I'm okay with however you feel too. We're not here to, do you understand you're not here in life to agree or disagree on anybody else's life? Do you know that? You're here just to agree and disagree on what you want in life. I know that's opposite because some of you are probably trying to control power over someone else. But you understand that, like, we're not here to disagree or agree on anything. It's your life, and you should have the right to live your life exactly the way that you dream it. And the more powerful you are, the more you'll get there. The more powerful your relationships are, your community are, your energy is, the quicker you're going to get there. And this is what I learned. That's why it's been so important to do this conquering fear training, because fear is holding anybody back from the desired result they want. So how do we deal with this? How do we deal with this shit, right? Especially in the moment, When you have a state of fear, do you normally hold your breath or do you breathe a lot? You hold your breath, don't you? Type in, is that what happens? You're like, do you ever see someone get scared? They go like this, and they swallow their breath, right? Well, if we know that in a state of fear, we're swallowing our breath, well, I bet a good thing to do in fear is to breathe. It sounds so simple, not simple in the moment until we conditioned it that critical thinking, powerful state, feeling pressure, anxiety, bubbling over, breathe. Now, there's a lot of different ways to breathe. So I'm not going to tell you I'm a breathing expert, even though I have been breathing my entire life. I'm just going to tell you that breathing in and out and focusing on what is happening now. What is the truth in this moment? What is the truth in this moment? Oh my God, I think that's a ghost. Okay, what is the truth in this moment? Is it a ghost? Is it not a ghost? How will you know? How can we identify truth? When we could identify truth, then we could decide the desired power I have to put on this, right? If I go like this, that's a guy in a mask. Is that a bad guy in a mask, or is it wintertime and he's cold? State of power. Is this true? This guy grabs a crowbar, starts coming at me. My power goes up. My fear goes away. I neutralize the opponent. Now, if I don't have a powerful state, fear comes in, and I either got to flight or I freeze and get hit by the crowbar. But I have to identify what is the truth in this moment. Answer this for me. The more truthful you become on a soul level, on an inside, just conscious level, will you live a better life or a worse life? What do you think? The more connected you become to truth, right? You're going to have a better life. Think of what you're fighting, Chuck, at nighttime, going to bed, mind's racing. You know what you're fighting? You don't know the truth. Like, so you convince yourself the truth is people may not show up and there's going to be a big problem and fucking job's going to cancel and maybe I'm going to deal with this stuff. And it's like, hang on, take a moment, breathe, ramp up your power. Is this truth? Well, I don't know if it's true in the morning. Okay. Calculated decision process. Let me take my power, write out my decision plan for life. Okay, I'm going to tackle this, do this. And you go, well, you know what? I've looked at all sides of the plan. I looked, if this happens, I'll do that. I looked at this happens, I'll do that. Might as well have a restful peace. See, when you're struggling, especially, who is a racing mind at nighttime? Type in the chat bar. Who is a racing mind at nighttime, right? Just racing, racing, racing. I just want you just to go like this. Okay, let me identify some truth. Let me raise my state of power up. Let me start to breathe. And let me look at both sides of what could happen. Okay? One side, nobody might show up tomorrow. What do I do? Well, I'll just have to do this, 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 and this. Done. The other side, everyone shows up. What do I do? I'm going to manage them to do this, 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 and this. Right? That's what I do. When I see both sides, I'm prepared. Write that down. When you see both sides, you're prepared. When you don't see both sides, that's when fear comes in. Fear is predicting a future that never happened. Fear is predicting a future that never happened. Now, part two is visualize. Visualize. I am such a big believer on visualizing the desired outcome you want to see. When you visualize the desired outcome, let me write this. So here is the racing mind. And the racing mind has random thoughts all over like this, right? Has random thoughts everywhere. And what I want to do is I want to take the random thoughts and I want to put it into the desired thought. The desired thought. That's it. The desired thought. That's what I want. That's what I'm going to see. That's where I'm going. That's what it's going to feel like. That's what it's going to exactly happen. That then takes you from confusion to your truth. That's what that's going to do, everybody. It's going to take you from confusion to your desired truth. The more desired truths you have, the more thoughtful, visualized truths you create, the more unstoppable you become. The more powerful you become. Once you understand all the aspects of power. What I want to do is just get you to the point you understand you don't have to live in a state of fear. If that's the only thing we accomplish tonight, you go, okay, I'm going to breathe and realize I could have a different truth and don't have to live in a state of fear. We accomplished something. Some of you, it's going to be so much more. Now here, we said we want to see both sides. We want to see both sides. Now, what that means is this. Here and here. One of us says, you know what? Eating jelly, eating candy is bad. The other one says eating candy is good. When I could see both sides, I could see candy as good and as bad. Can eating a really nasty candy be good? Can it have a form of good? You tell me in the chat bar. Can it? Can eating candy have a form of? Yeah. It could create an emotional state, right? It could create this feeling of joy. It could create awareness. Of course it can. Okay. Can eating candy also be a not good? a downside. Yeah, might rot my teeth, right? Might jack up my, I might get diabetes or something. When I could see something of both sides, when you could look at the pandemic and see the upside to the pandemic and the downside to the pandemic, you'll neutralize and you won't have an emotional state. You won't have a state of triggering. It's only when you see one side that fear is created. Now, the last part here is to make conscious decisions. Conscious decisions. Okay, I have fear. I'm feeling it. I have anxiety. What is my conscious decision I can make? Well, my first conscious decision could be this. I'm going to breathe. Conscious decision. Second, I'm going to visualize. Now, I will tell you that this becomes a lot harder if you neutralize it through chemicals and other things. So just so you know, when you drink too much alcohol or take drugs or something, all you're doing is you're neutralizing fear by, it's just creating a different film inside the mind, right? It's rewiring the brain to neutralize it. It doesn't make anything go away. The problem, a lot of times, these are magnifying, and when the fears come back, they come back greater. That's why people then have to sedate it more, and then the fear grows bigger, and then they sedate it more. The fear becomes so big, and this is what's causing the sad thing on the planet today, where people, there's suicide all over the place that's happening, right? This fear. All right, tell me which part of the how to deal with it is resonating with you that you need to start doing. Type it in the chat bar. What part do you have to start doing? Both sides? Yeah. Good. Visualize. Breathe and visualize. Both sides. Yeah. Visualize. Okay. Watch my breathing when in the state of fear. Visualize. Okay, great job. Let's go to the next section here. So now we understand. Let's do a little Yellow Brick Road here. Let's go here. Okay. We understand what fear is. We understand the results of fear, right? Great fear, little power, great power, control and eliminate fear. We understand our reactions to fear. Then we understand that fear sits in parts of the body. And then we understand that there's ways we could deal with this. Now we have to understand, well, wait, how can we just rewire this thing? How can we rewire this fear? Now, remember, fear is a fragmented truth. What's a fragmented truth? It's a whole bunch of experiences, like all of these little things combined together that we created into truth. Bigfoot's real, fragmented truth. Why? Well, I seen a documentary. There was a foot in the ground. I seen another one. It's a dark image in the woods. I watched a show. I heard the howling. It's fragmented truth. Is it truth? No. Only truth is truth when you have a definite agreement on that's exactly what it is. Then it's truth. Since I know it's a fragmented truth, well, then what I want to do is I could go back and start to rewind time. Well, wait a minute. Let me go back in time and see where that fear comes from. Like when I was a young kid, there was a couple fears that stories were told that became horrible. The one was Bigfoot, and the other one was the Jersey Devil. Anybody ever hear of this Jersey Devil thing? Like, who created this thing, right? It's the 13th child. It's got wings and horns, and the mother bred it, and it comes out at night, and it's like, holy crap. Like, as a young kid, you're thinking this is the most horrible thing ever. Hockey team. So what do? Well, if you believe the Jersey Devil's real, you start making weapons, man, because if that thing's going to come at you, you want to be powerful. What you don't realize is that was a whole bunch of fragmented truth. And the only way to get rid of it is you got to rewind time to go back there And the next part is replace the meaning. Replace the meaning. Well, hang on a minute. Let me look back there. Was it a creature, or was it everybody was dealing with other fears that if we could create a bigger fear, you'll forget about the other fears and this will become the controlling fear, right? Like, shit, if you want to get your kids, if you have young kids and they constantly don't come home on time, I guess you could just tell them that at 7 o'clock at night, the Jersey Devil starts flying around looking for little boys and girls. Like, that would be a huge fear. Their ass would get home, right? Or I guess carry a gun or something, right? But I got to replace the meaning and rewind the time. If you could start to look at where all these fears combine and stick together like that spider web, well, this is great. I just could go back here and replace the meaning of it. Replace the meaning. Now, you have to be powerful to rewind time to do that. You got to be powerful. If you're not in a state of power, it'll be very hard to do that. Be very hard to do that. Now, let's talk a little bit about change as power. When you start, we look at fear and we look at power. When we eliminate fears and we live in a greater state of power, do we make better decisions? Tell me in the chat bar. Do we make better decisions? Do we make quicker decisions? Do we have a clearer mind? Do we understand how to use critical thinking for it, right? When you're in a state of power, this stays at bay, gets pushed away. And the more fear we push away, the bigger this grows here. And then you don't worry about all those other things, right? And you address them as they come up. It's like, oh, death of something. Okay, let's address this through all the aspects. Let's breathe through it. Let's visualize it. It's my uncle is in, he's in the hospital with COVID. He doesn't have a really great heart. And I'm talking to my cousin to find out about him. And she goes, can you pray for him and stuff? And I said, I'll do better than that. I'll visualize the outcome that I desire for him. How about you do the same? Just visualize the outcome you desire. Because if you visualize the outcome you desire, that sends energy, prayers, and everything you do because you're seeing the desired state, right? What I did was create a sense of power in her. And by the sense of power, I started to remove her fear. Because her fear, just remember fear, anything you focus on, write this down, anything you focus on expands. Good or bad, right? Anything you focus on expands. If you focus now, just so you know, anxiety is a conditioned state of focusing on fear over and over so many times that it creates a state of constant anxiety. You've been conditioned that way. Why? Because parents told you, don't do this, don't go there, don't act like this, don't speak up like this, you're bad, don't dress that way, you know? And you see it on both sides depending on how they were brought up. Some women have the anxiety, you know, don't look like this, don't dress like this, don't talk like this, you'll be a slut, you'll be this, right? They take on anxiety, no one will ever like me, I'm a bad person. Some guys take it on, right? You're going to be weak. You're never going to accomplish anything. Oh my God, I'm just going to be a loser. So if everybody tells you to be afraid and everyone tells you you're a loser, one day you'll just believe it and then it will become your truth, right? It becomes your truth. Your truth is anybody that says, well, let's learn to settle for what I got. It's a conditioned behavior. It's a fear behavior. Right? People used to tell me this in business. They would go, well, you know, big company, big problems. Translation, you'll never have a big company because you fear a problem. I said, no, I don't believe that way. So I'm glad you believe that. That wasn't my belief. That's why I grew a big company, because I didn't have that fear that you're trying to say there. I thought big company, big profit, more money. That's what I thought. That sounded like a great way to get rid of fear and create legacy, right? All right, let's talk about big moves to the other side. What should you consider doing moving forward with fear? And then after this, I'm going to show you how to replace the reflection. So the big moves I want you to do on the other side is, one, you got to take massive action. Okay. Massive action on putting into place what I just talked about with fear. Okay. The next thing is you got to take a next brave step. As you become powerful, you start having conversations, you start doing things that you've been shoving down inside. Now, don't tell anybody you're going to go tell the truth to now. Don't tell them I told you to tell the truth. You decided you're going to, and then maybe it's not the truth. Don't tell them I said you should go have a new conversation. You decide. I don't need a whole bunch of hate mail and shit. You're like, now my wife wants to tell me exactly how she feels. Well, you shouldn't have took power from her, so she didn't feel like she could tell you how she felt, right? So I don't want anybody fucking emailing me now and stuff, right? The next thing is calculated decisions. But if they do, I promise I'll help them pass their fear if that happens, okay? Calculated decisions. Hey, I'm going to share this conversation. I normally would be afraid to do it. Maybe you have to set the stage for the person. Hey, I'm going to share a conversation with you. And just to let you know, I've been afraid to do this conversation. So what I'm going to do is, instead of being a liar to myself and not telling the truth, I'm going to tell you the truth because it's the right thing to do. And I want to live in a state of power, not in a state of fear. So I'll share it with you and then we could have a conversation. The difference between a conversation, okay, between conflict and conversation is intent. Just so you know, that's the difference between conflict and conversation, right? Or confrontation and conversation. The difference between that is intent. So if you send an intent, I'm going to share something, but there won't be no confrontation about it. We'll just have conversations about it and help each other understand. Well, then life will start to become more amazing. And then you have to start owning your true self, not your controlled self. You're not here to live within your mom's or dad's beliefs, your mom's or dad's paradigms, your neighbor's paradigms, your friend's paradigms. You're here to live your true self. Some of you don't know who your true self is. Some of you, found that through the identity training we did. And some of you are probably still working on the process. The other thing that could help is to identify what life could be like. Like what could life, what could it be like? Living in a state of power, like what could that be like? Living in a state of just eliminating fear. And I'm hoping through this training, you're feeling fears going away. Are some of you feeling more powerful now than you did before? Whatever, less than 90 minutes ago? I hope you are. Okay. You should be, right? And then you train. You train for life's understandings. You train for life understandings. That's what you do. What does that mean, train for life understanding? Understanding things like fear, power, paralysis, all these things. You have to train for these things. Most people only train for business stuff. They never train for life stuff. That's why I'm doing life stuff and business stuff. This is all life stuff here, because if you train for life, you're prepared for anything. If you train for one aspect, you're only prepared for one thing. That's the thing about training for life. Let's look at this, replacing the reflection here, right? As you start, replace the reflection means I want to start to replace how I interact with the world moving forward that can interact with fear in a different way. Here's what I learned, right? What you do, what you say, what you think. What you do, what you say, what you think. So in a state of fear, what am I going to do? All right, what am I going to do in this state? I'm going to breathe. Well, what do you say in that state of fear? Do you say, I'm scared, I'm afraid, I'm running away? or I'm powerful. See, I want to visualize what I want. And what do you think about? I think about where it sits in my body. How do I eliminate it? How do I reprogram it? How do I change it? When we do these things, we replace the current reflection that we're having, the reflection of ourself out there. Remember, fear is a direct reflection back. Why do we say that? Fear comes from inside of you. It's projected outside of you. You visually think about that, or auditory or something, and then it comes right back to you and gives you the emotional state. It's a reflection. Just change the reflection. You'll change every part of you. You'll become more powerful. Think different, do different, say different. Boom. Just type in boom in the chat bar. There should be a boom for you. Okay, Jason Kirby, just type in boom. There should be boom for you. Okay. He's like, man, I'm trying to write shit and stuff. Okay. All right. Let me go through this with you guys. So tell me, what was your big takeaway so far on that stuff? And then I want to let you know something that we have coming up. Might be interest for some of you. I know a bunch of you are already going to be doing it. I'll share it. Here's what we have coming up for you guys. We did this training the first of the year. It was called Seekers of Power. And we're doing it again. It'll be coming up in a couple weeks or so. Those that are interested, we'll talk about dates and stuff. And this one's called the Awakening Within. If you have any questions about the training, and if it's a fit for you, and if you think that you need to know more about it, you just reach out and I'll just get on a call with you, right? I'll get on a call and I'll explain it. I will tell you, if you think you're not living in a super state of power, well, then I would strongly think of the training. It starts every night's like right around 7 p.m. Eastern. So most parts of the world, we'll have people from all over the world doing it. We have type in the chat bar, where are some of you logging in from? We got people from Australia. We got people from everywhere. New Zealand. We got people from all over here. I'm so honored, all of you. Thank you. The dates, we will, you know what, Judy, if you're interested in it, send us, Aaron will put the email and I'll give you the dates for it. Okay. It's coming up in like 2 weeks, but I'll give you the exact date so you have it. Bermuda. Yep. Beautiful Bermuda. All right. So what I want to do is leave on what is your, hey, Ben Kayata, what's up? Michelle, what's happening? Let's type in the chat bar. What is your number one action you're going to do when you leave the training? I'm going to miss the first, going to be out of cell range. Yeah, no big deal on that, Chuck. You get the recording anyway, so no big deal. Just type in your first action item, and then I'm going to let you guys go. First action item to tackle fear, and then feel free to type in how this training has been for you. Beautiful. Marcel says, move forward, reflect, breathe and visualize. Good and bad, yeah, opposites. Identify my fears that hold me back from growth. Breathe, visualize. Yeah, so great, everybody. And is there people in your life that you would like to get this training to watch it? Type that in the chat bar. Is there people they'd like to get this training to? If there is, we will make a way so you could share the training. We'll tell you exactly how to do that. I think everybody should go through this training and start to understand fear. And then for a bunch of you that stayed for the whole 90 minutes, I hope you'll join me on the Seekers of Power training, where we will make you so powerful you will be superhuman. That's all I got for you. I love you guys. Thank you. Have an amazing night. Live a life with no fear, everybody. Take care. Boom.